Hey guys, welcome back to Don's Life. We've got Mrs. Don's Life here. We're actually in Minot, North Dakota to pick up some truck parts for some future videos and stuff that's going on with my GMC Sierra AT4. But I thought it was a good opportunity, since I'm testing all these upgraded screens on my GMC Sierra, to take the two that I have from Z Innovations. We have the 12.3 inch right here currently installed, and we have the 13.1. Thank you for doing that. She's really good. Just natural talent. But I thought, since this road trip from where we live to Minot is about 6 hours, give or take, we could test the 12.1 or 12.3, sorry, on the way down and try to understand what it's like for the driver to use, the passenger to use. And she has some things that she likes so far about this one that work well for her as a passenger. Then on the way home, we're going to install the 13.1, which is the little bigger screen, not as wide of an aspect. And then we're going to run it through all the same real world usage tests that we did with this one on the way down. And then we'll do a bit of a comparison or a summary to end off this video. So this is going to be more like lifestyle use of these screens. But I will tell you right off the bat, both screens are good choices, but are they good choices for what you're going to use them for? So take us out.
Let's go.
Good job. We are now back from our road trip. We have the 12.3 inch screen here, which was really easy to swap out with the 13.1. So now we've used both screens for several hours back to back, trying to figure out which user experience or overall experience do we find better. So Mrs. Don's Life and I have compiled a list, which I'll be referring to throughout this video, doing a comparison of the two screens and our overall experience from this road trip. It's not going to be all encompassing for all the different scenarios out there. Some people might want to use an app that I've never even tried before, and its experience could be better on one screen versus the other. I don't really know. That's going to be impossible to do that type of review, but at least I can share with you on a road trip with your spouse what our takeaways were from using both of these screens. So that might be helpful to some of you, and we really hope that it is. Now, if this is your first time here watching one of these screen upgrade videos, I've reviewed 3 screens now for my GMC Sierra, also available for the Chevy Silverados. This is a 2021, so the 2019s, all the way up to some select 2023s, 2024s. As long as they have the old interior like I do here, then these upgrade options may be compatible with your vehicle. Definitely check out these manufacturers' websites to get all the information and pick what is going to work and be compatible for you. I pride myself on not pushing products and telling you have to buy anything. I try to educate you, share my experiences, and then you can make informed decisions on what works well for you. Case in point, we have a carbon fiber steering wheel up here. This is from Z Innovations. I'm not being paid to test this out in my vehicle, but if you watch the video, ad revenue from Google will pay me over time, depending on how much it gets watched. So I hope this just adds some clarity to those of you that may be wondering if I'm getting paid to do these reviews. I am not. But if Z Innovations is somebody that you want to do business with and maybe pick up one of their screens, I can tell you that they are a great organization to deal with. I will give you this one piece of advice though. They are in Australia. So if you're reaching out to them through Facebook or other communication channels, keep in mind that if it's 2 p.m., say in Texas on a Friday, it's actually 6 a.m. on a Saturday in Australia. So they'll reply to you during their business hours, and there's going to be that sweet spot where the communication can go both ways pretty quickly, depending on the time of day and the day of the week. But I do have a favor to ask. If you have any inquiries or questions for Z Innovations and you contact them on Facebook or their other channels, please do so on their business channels and not the owner's personal channel on Facebook. I guess he's been getting a lot of messages at all hours of the night. It's just not something that would be pleasant, I don't think, for anybody. So if you can keep your communication to their business channels, they will get back to you depending on their business hours. So don't stress out if you don't get an answer right away. It's probably because they're sleeping. Now, I am not gonna lie, this screen comparison is so close. So I'm gonna go through a number of things that I've written down in my notes here, and Mrs. Don's Life and I have graded them. It's either a tie in some cases, or 1 point is awarded to one screen over the other. Again, we're talking about the 12.3 inch, which is the ultra wide screen, and we're talking about the 13.1 inch, which is installed right here, which is just more of a larger version of the screen that used to be there. For example, this gold area here in this box is around 11 inches, I think, versus the 8 inches that would have been in the old screen right here. So we're going to start doing a comparison on a number of categories. Okay, I'm just setting the other screen up there so you can see the size difference. Obviously perspective's off a little bit because that one's farther away. But the first category is specifications. Both screens are basically identical other than their form factor when it comes to the processor, the chipsets that are used, the operating system. It's all the same. You're going to get the same level of support from Z Innovations for both screens. So for specs, we have a tie. Now the next category is installation. They have the same installation process. You can install this body right here, and then you can swap out the screens. They're really easy to swap out. You just attach the different harnesses and then it'll clip into place into the body. So when it comes to installation, since the screens install exactly the same, we'll call it a tie. Now remember, these are larger upgraded screens that can do a lot more, including playing media. So when it comes to which is going to be less distracting as an upgrade in your vehicle, we have to give the point to the 12.3 inch because it sits lower, because your split screen can be divided into two similar size screens like your original, but with two different forms of content on them. So when it comes to being less of a driver distraction, then we have to go with the ultra wide 12.3 inch. We'd say it wins the point for that one. So the next is the auxiliary connection. Both can use it. So having that right there is so nice because you don't have to fight with the shortcomings of Bluetooth, although you can still connect it to Bluetooth if you desire. Now remember, if you don't have the Bose system that would give you the 3.5mm auxiliary jack, they will supply you with an adapter that will use your USB to an auxiliary, and then you'll have this option, but it'll say USB auxiliary attached to it, and then you'll have almost the same performance as we do with the auxiliary cable. Really, this just means more stable, because it's an analog connection, it's just connected. You'll also have less audio delay when you're playing video. So in that case, it's a tie for both screens. So the next category is original OEM functions, like the infotainment stuff that you would have had when you bought your truck on your 7 or 8 inch screen. All of it is here. So really the functionality is exactly the same, just depends on how big you want it. And you can split screen this between the two screens. So from functionality, we have to give them a tie because they both work well for the OEM access and functionality. So the next category is internet connectivity. So whether you are using the Wi-Fi hotspot in your vehicle, both are compatible. Whether you're using the hotspot from your phone, both are compatible. Or whether you're installing a SIM card into the SIM tray, which I routed mine down here. Mine's right here. If you put the SIM card in, then you can get internet all the time. And that's probably your best experience. But all of the options I just mentioned work well with both screens, so we'll call it a tie. Now I know most of what I've talked about so far, there's been ties, but we will get to some categories where one screen is more favorable to us than the other. So warranty on the screens are 2 years for both, so that's an easy tie. Now when it comes to video streaming, we're going to give the point to the 13.1 because all the passengers can see a much larger screen, including people in the back seat if you have any. So I think from an experience standpoint, and if you're going to watch streaming video or video games, all your passengers are probably going to enjoy this larger screen better. So point awarded to the larger one. Now the next comparison has to do with split screen and the cameras. You can see how they look here. Now the original install of this screen, this perspective was actually elongated to fit this area of the split screen, and it was distorted. So everything was kind of compressed and it didn't look quite right. So that's been improved with an update. So you can see that we kind of have the proper perspective here, but now the screen is quite a bit smaller. So when it comes to camera view, split screen with something else, I think we favor the ultra wide because it just fits here better. But if you want to have media on the other side opposite your cameras, and you can switch these, it can be either on the left or right, you may want the larger screen. But we're going to give the point to the ultra wide just from a presentation standpoint when it comes to using your cameras, split screen with something else. If you have the trailer tech like I do here, you have all the extra options for your trailer and things like that. We're going to give an extra point to the 12.3 because when it comes to safety and wanting to monitor your cameras but also have something else going on, then for towing, we also think the 12.3 will just do it a little better experience-wise. They'll both function well, but one I feel will give you a little better experience, which is going to be that one there, in our opinion. Now the next category is CarPlay. I prefer to use mine on wired CarPlay. That way when I share my hotspot off my phone, they don't conflict. But as you can see, both are presented quite well, and I have no complaints when it comes to CarPlay. Both are equally good, so it's a tie. Now the next category is ease of use for the driver. You can see with a larger screen, everything is bigger and easier to press. I find that it's quite easy to navigate satellite radio, for example, which we do use often up here in Canada because we don't have anything else to do except shovel snow and listen to music. So using the original interface on a larger screen is quite nice. So as a driver, I'm awarding the point for ease of use to the 13.1 inch. Now for ease of use for the passenger, and this might be biased because my wife is on the shorter side, she's 5'2", having the wider screen and then putting the infotainment system off to the right-hand side, and then I have whatever I have going on here, whether it be navigation, which it typically is. Mrs. DONSLIFE found that her short body and arms were able to get access to the slider, which would be right about here, to keep changing like a DJ all of the songs. Now, as annoying as that may be for the driver, it was very convenient for Mrs. DONSLIFE when it came to reaching the things that were on the screen for the ultra wide, specifically for the infotainment system. So when it comes to passenger ease of use, Mrs. DONSLIFE is insistent that this one, the 12.3 inch, gets the point. Now this next one might be controversial. Both screens have had some minor glitches. Let me try to explain. So both screens, for some reason, if you're running split screen for a long duration, and maybe it's the apps that were selected, I really don't know, they would kick out and they would go back to the launcher screen, which would be, in this case, the Vivid launcher, and then I would just have to re-enable split screen again and get back the windows that I wanted. So both screens have done that, where they've kicked me out to either a screen like this or back to the launcher screen, and then I've had to manually go and set up my split screen again. So that might have to do with the software, with the launcher. Remember, we put a third-party launcher on here, not something that came with the screens. Both of them have it installed, so maybe that's the commonality, but those are the glitches that I've experienced since that launcher's been installed, as well as another one where sometimes when I turn on the vehicle, instead of going here, which I have set up as my main screen, it will maybe show up here, or it will show up here, and then bounce back to here, and then possibly even bounce back to here. So I might have some back and forth action, but as you can see, it's easy to get back to the screen you want to be on, but those are the glitches that I've experienced. And using both of these screens for the last couple of months, I haven't had to shut off the truck, restart it. I haven't had to reset the screens. I've rebooted the screens doing some software updates and patches, but I haven't had to do it to get them to behave properly. So I'm really satisfied when it comes to user experience for both screens being very stable. The next category is annoyances. So both screens have something annoying about them, but they're very different. And this again might be subjective. This might not be your experience, but to be fair to Z Innovations, they do have a screw that you can install on the back of this screen to stop it from doing that. I have not installed that screw because I want to be able to hot swap the screen. I just haven't put that screw in. So there is a fix for this. So maybe we can't use that against the Innovations because they're aware that it needs to be anchored down a little firmer because it's a much taller screen, but it does rattle. I could put some foam tape just in the gap there and it would probably look after it, but I just haven't done that. But I wanted to talk about that is something that you may want to address if you had this screen. When it comes to the 12.3 inch, it sits in there firmer because it's lower, its center of gravity is lower, it clips in a much lower profile, so it doesn't vibrate or rattle. But you have this silver cap here, which could be painted to match the body. And I think they are gonna look at making those black to match the body at some point going forward. But if you happen to get one that has the silver cap, I found it annoying that you could still see it when this was installed. So from a fit and finish standpoint, it just looked kind of awkward, which is, in my opinion, a little annoying. So in that case, it's a tie for both screens. Okay, we're getting close to the end. I know some of these might be trivial for you, but I'm gonna go through them because we made notes about it. The next category has to do with the on-screen keyboard. I got Google Maps up here and you can see the keyboard in Google Maps takes up this much real estate. Now you can imagine on the ultra-wide screen, which has more of a profile like this, the keyboard just leaves a sliver of what you're interacting with at the top here. And depending on some of the other apps, this keyboard can actually be a little taller. So we have to give the point to the 13.1 inch screen for the keyboard just being a little more friendly when it comes to presentation because of this form factor. So if you're going to have the passenger or yourself have to type sometimes, you may find it a little better on this one. Now the next category is kind of funny depending on how you look at it. It's either unfortunate or fortunate depending on your perspective, but I've had the opportunity to try these screens in sub-zero temperatures, and both of them at around -25 are sluggish but usable. But that's not that much different than the original screen that comes with these trucks. They need to warm up in the cabin a little bit before the LCD screens become a little more responsive, and that's exactly what happened with these screens. Is they're a little bit sluggish, they work. You have to make sure that your fingers are warm as you're interacting with the screen to get it to do what you want. But the good news is you still have access to all your climate controls, which are the most important, and you're not reliant on the screen's interactivity to access them. Now this is obviously a geographical problem. Depending on where you live, it might not matter, but I know my friends in Alaska, I know my friends on the prairies here in Canada, we have to worry about this stuff. So both screens get a tie, but I wanted to report that they do work in sub-zero temperatures. Now at some point it's going to get colder. I'm going to continue to test these screens and others, and we'll see how they fare over the course of this winter. Now the last category is going to be just overall looks and presentation, and we're going to award the point to the 13.1 inch because it makes the most dramatic difference going from the 8-inch display or 7-inch that you may have had before. Everything works well, both screens work well, but if you want that OEM look with less distraction, then definitely I would lean towards the 12.3. But if you want big and make a statement, now I think what did it for me is when I was warming up my truck the other day and I was inside the house, when I came outside and it was dark out, I could see through the windows and I could see the display lighting up and all the icons, and just that big screen and that big dramatic difference from what we came from definitely solidified it for me, and Mrs. DONSLIFE agrees. However, again, if you want that OE look and you want something a little more subdued, that works great and adds a ton of benefits to what your original system only offered, then the 12.3, you can't go wrong with it either. So I hope that was helpful, but remember, you can buy one screen setup and then you can just add a screen down the road and swap it out by keeping the same body in place, and then you get the best of both worlds. You can swap between both screens, so there's a bonus there. So that concludes today's video. If you want to check out more from Z Innovations, definitely head over to their website. They'll even give you some deep discounts if you use the promo code DONSLIFE to save some money on the product, as well as DONSLIFE2 to get free shipping. And remember, they carry more than just screens. They have heated carbon fiber steering wheels, so you might want to check those out. Again, I'll leave all the information in the video description below. All the links will be there. You can definitely check them out. But if you liked today's video, hit that like button. Please consider subscribing, and we'll talk to you next time.